Hey everyone. So I'm not gonna lie, this is one of those chapters where immediately out of the gate it was cooking with gas, everything was firing on all cylinders in my opinion, and then we get to the final chapter and it just ends. It stops with seeing a hulked out Spinner, and what I mean by that is like the transition in itself from the battle with with All for One and Shigaraki to the scene of seeing a hulked out Spinner is fine in itself, but it also felt it almost felt like it deflated the tension almost, of what was going on. Like I don't know, something about that final page just felt weirdly underwhelming compared to everything else that was going on. But okay, let's also talk about that final scene, what it means, and just the implications of it. Because if I'm understanding the context correctly, Spinner is basically plowing down resistance and making it ever closer to the hospital in order to save Kurogiri. And yeah, All for One is kind of right. The sole person who can kind of turn the tables on this conflict is Kurogiri, because not only would All for One be taking away the hero's personal portal at this time, but the villains would be getting him back means that they could just as easily escape to fight another day. But the thing is, as it stands in the current climate and battle of heroes versus villains, the villains are the ones with all the cards, all the chips to use. Like when we get down to it, taking away Kurogiri was only taking away one card they had in a variety of different powers they had at their disposal. And Kurogiri in the hands of the heroes is really the only major card they have to play. So taking Kurogiri away means that they could just meaning the villains would escape and they can live to fight another day. The heroes cannot afford that outcome. So from this point, it's kind of an interesting question of who Horikoshi has lined up to fight Spinner, because in terms of obvious candidates to take him on, as he is now, Endeavor is one of the most obvious candidates, but I think he's still dealing with Dabi alongside Shoto. So it's as weird as it is. I feel like this might be setting up for Death Arms to come back. I know, weird to say, but this whole thing with Spinner feels like the perfect setup for Horikoshi to bring him out of retirement. But even if Death Arms isn't the one who faces Spinner, I think Horikoshi is still in some ways setting up in order for Death Arms to return and come out of retirement, because I don't think he would have retired Death Arms if he didn't have a plan to bring him back. And it does feel like even if he doesn't fight Spinner, that this is sort of setting Death Arms up to kind of come out of retirement in some way. I just don't know when. With that said, let's talk about the battle of Izuku versus All for One Shigaraki itself. And right out of the gate, one thing I want to talk about is I like how it really emphasized the idea that these abilities in themselves aren't strong enough to take on All for One, and only after being a part of One for All were they empowered enough to do so. It's kind of that thing that leans into this sort of camaraderie idea, while showing that the quirks enhancement capabilities of One for All really are that powerful. Even more than that, though, I like how it does kind of reinforce the idea that it is only Izuku who could kind of make this possible, as the implication is it's because Izuku is quirkless that their power has reached their most powerful state as it is. Because it is kind of leaning into that chosen one cheese with Izuku, I feel this is also calling back to the idea of the earlier moments in the series of Izuku training, almost as if it's it feels like the implication of what's being told to us here is that because One for All is drawing upon Izuku's natural strength and abilities, and that in itself is what has allowed these abilities to become even stronger in some ways, on top of One for All's already powerful enhancement. And And like I said, I like how it is tying the earlier parts of the series into this. Now, it is trying to tie the earlier parts of the series into this, although I do admit it is like by a very loose thread that I feel it's tying all this together. But it still does work as a callback, and in some ways we have also seen this in action with with a lot of how Izuku has utilized these abilities thus far. Of course, I can't talk about the fight without addressing the fact that All For One said he hasn't even used a quirk yet, and yeah, this is definitely a reason to worry, because there's an unpredictability in what he'll even use, or what the hell All For One is even transforming into by the end of the chapter. Like, something is seriously going to be hitting the fan after this chapter, and kind of scared to find out what it is. Now, on a final note, I do want to talk about the panel page construction again, because last chapter I criticized it pretty heavily. But this week it feels a little better, and a little better while still having maybe some minor problems. Because in my opinion, that there's a lot of more panels that feel like that they have more freedom of open space in order to like operate. But then there's also those panels that still do feel relatively confining, and it's also in those latter pages where the dialogue balloons also feel more than a little intrusive. That's like the biggest thing. I think to get a little more positive about it, I think my favorite example of the former and how Horikoshi did get it right this week is that spread page of Izuku dashing toward Shigaraki with the spirits of the previous holders behind him, all Final Fantasy XIV style, and also even the moment where All For One Shigaraki is falling down against the blank space, saying he hasn't used a single quirk yet. All that is what was good use of the panels, in my opinion, and even the first couple pages of the chapter, from the flashback to Izuku leaping into battle, were just great uses of panel space. But it's like, for as good as all those moments were, everything else in between, it still felt a little more claustrophobic and intrusive. But again, it's not a huge issue, but it is still kind of an issue. But yeah, guys, that's pretty much all I got for this review. If you enjoyed the video, like, comment, subscribe. Follow me on Twitter and on this Crunchyroll. Be sure to notification bell, the subscribe button, and just share the video around, guys. Dark Knight Vinay, signing off. Later, everyone.